All right, welcome back to Bigfoot Forensics. I've been told that my last couple of videos are absolutely boring, not because of the material, but because of how I presented it. Apparently, I have no personality in those videos. I've been told by this person that I do have a personality. Thank you, mugshot. I'm going to attempt to introduce it, whether it be bad or good. I don't know. So, what I want to talk about today is photography. And I'm not gonna get into all the nitty-gritty details, it's just it and I'm gonna do a separate one after this, but this particular thing is kind of important that I wanna talk about. Um, as you know, I do crime scene work, right? Uh, and one of the most important skill sets you're gonna have as a crime scene investigator is knowing how to use your camera. And besides understanding how to use all the little dials and understanding what all the little numbers are, basically, and at the most basic thing that you have to know is how to point the thing. What are you pointing the stupid camera at? I know it makes intuitively you say, I pointed at the thing I want to take a picture of, right? That's not always the case, especially when we're talking about casting, when we're talking about documenting our foot impressions that we found, fingerprints, one of the biggest issues that I'm getting with the photographs that I'm getting is it looks like there's some good stuff there, right? But they're either blurry, the depth of field is off, which is making it focused on one area, then blurring out the back end. We're going to get to that later. We're going to do a whole section on that. But today I want to talk about keeping the camera parallel. So, a lot of the reasons that some of our photographs aren't working isn't because of the type of camera, it's not because of the resolution. You don't have to have a high end camera. What the problem is the camera placement. Is the lens itself, the camera body, the lens, parallel to the surface or parallel to that item that you're trying to photograph? So one of the things that happens is if this camera is not parallel to the surface or parallel to the item that you're photographing, it can cause distortion. And once distortion's introduced, it's not a depiction of the evidence of how it really is. It's a distorted view of that evidence, which can present a problem for later. And I'm going to actually show you why instead of just telling you, this is how I want you to do it. I want to say, this is how I want you to do it. This is how you do it. And then I'm going to give you some examples at the end on why it makes such a big deal. Because photographing a footprint's not just creating a visual record, it's creating like a permanent document that could later be used for analysis, comparison purposes. You may have to overlay an image on top of another image. You may have to present it in court. You may want to publish it. And you're going to have people who are professionals who are going to immediately look at that particular image and cast judgment right away. The image that you make off of a piece of evidence directly correlates to how well your investigation is or how well you did your investigation. Um, the judges do it, the juries do it. There's an inherent bias. Once you look at a photograph, if it's well done, you think, oh my gosh, maybe the rest of their stuff is just as well done. So you can't skimp by on a thing that's going to become a piece of evidence because sometimes those photographs are the only thing that's left. Whether you cast it improperly, whether the rain came, whether some type of weird element came, animals, something destroyed the rest of the evidence, and all you have are your photographs. How well did you document that evidence? Was it done properly? So, when we talk about keeping our camera parallel to the surface, I don't necessarily mean always to the surface. I mean parallel to the impression that we're photographing or to the item of evidence that we're photographing. Because rarely do we encounter, except for in urban areas, but if we're out looking for Bigfoot footprints, the trails aren't necessarily going to be perfectly flat, are they? They're going to be on slopes. We're going to have slopey terrains. We're going to have snow covered things. Things are going to be wiki wonky, wiki wonky. They're going to be wonky. They're going to be tilted, sideways, sloped, all kinds of areas. So you got to have that camera tilted. So the camera has to match the impression, basically. So if the print slopes, the camera slopes. If the print's tilted, the camera's tilted. The impression serves as a reference plane for these things. So when the camera's angled relative to the impression, perspective distortion is introduced into the image. The portion of the impression closest to the lens appears larger, while the portion farther away seems smaller. Spaces between the features change, shapes are altered, straight lines appear curved. It's pandemonium. I don't know why I did that, but you get what I'm saying. Stuff changes, it becomes altered. It may appear normal at first glance, but then when you go into it to do measurements, you'll see that judging by the straight edge of that ruler, of that scale you placed into your photograph, it's now become skewed, which means measurements are now going to be skewed. They're going to be off. It's unusable. Best you can hope to get is it was this long, but you're not going to be able to go inside the impression and start measuring ridge to ridge distances and looking at pores and measuring those, all stuff that I need to do when I'm doing my analysis. Okay, so let's look at this fingerprint. Uh, and I smile when I say fingerprints. I don't know why. I like them. All right, so I want you to take these examples here. Look at these two fingerprints. The one on the right, the fingerprint is parallel. The one on the left, it is not. The camera's angled. And you can see with just a simple camera angle, with it not being parallel, uh, it gives the impression that the fingerprint is distorted. Now imagine what this would look like if we were looking at a Bigfoot footprint, taking it from a slight different angle. You can make it look smaller, like in this case. It can make it look larger. You almost could manipulate it if you knew what you were doing to make it look the way you kind of want it to look. But if you have a scale in the picture, then we know what's happening because you're going to have some major issues. And I'd also like to say that a scale only functions properly if the camera is parallel. If the camera's angled, the scale itself becomes distorted. And what happens when the scale is distorted? Our measurements become distorted. We have to pick and choose which ones we think are best and closest to the plane, but you could have someone like me argue against you for some of your measurements, and I wouldn't be wrong. Honestly, the photograph on the left is good for demonstrative purposes, but it's not good for any sort of analysis. And when I say demonstrative purposes, I mean like for what I used to hear. It's good as an example. It's good as like maybe some background scenery, but it's not good for presenting any type of evidence. That's done. So anyway, maintaining proper camera alignment, it's a deliberate practice. It's something that you don't forget about. It you would like to think that it becomes second nature, but I'll tell you, after photographing thousands and thousands of items, um, and that's not an exaggeration, thousands and thousands, I will say that uh, it's in the forefront of your mind all the time. I need to get this right. A lot of times, mainly because I'm the one who's going to be going back and doing the analysis. So I'm perfectly aware of what I need. I think the problem arises where a lot of people don't know exactly what is needed during the process of an analysis, and even some of the things that we're looking for, which is what I'm going to share with you in a minute. So, one of the easiest ways to make sure that we're doing this properly, and this is something that we do, um, while you're taking your pictures, review them. We're using digital photography. We have nothing but time. Remember, this particular evidence is something that if you're photographing it and document it in such a way that you're wanting somebody to look at it, well, then it may actually be important. And we're talking about an undiscovered species, an undiscovered, whatever you want to call it, it's undiscovered, right? It's not been proven. We don't have any exemplars, and we're working on documenting that. So if you're going to be documenting something that's that important that would make worldwide news, I would think it would be inherently like, oh my God, I'm going to have to actually document this right. We would take the time and do it properly. One of the things you can do is as you take the pictures, is you review them. And one of the easiest ways is you zoom in, take a look, make sure it's in focus, but you also check that scale that's there. Does it look distorted? And when I say distorted, I mean just when you're trying to do a parallel shot, you will see that sometimes it goes from bigger to smaller on your photograph that lets you know. And same with going in the other direction. It can actually look a little bit tilted. So you just zoom in, take a look at your scale, and make sure that it looks normal and it's not distorted. And trust me, it will not look normal if it's wrong because you are up close and personal doing some close up shots, not from up here, hopefully. Oh, and also remember, it is a digital camera. It's free. It's not like film. even if you know what film is, I don't know. But anyway, digital camera, take pictures, not boom, 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 done. No, use up that card. I mean, use it all. Today, I went outside to take a few pictures for this and a few pictures for another project I'm working on. I made 2 impressions and took close to 250 photographs, mainly because I'm bracketing and I'm checking to make sure I have different light settings. I'm making sure I have everything in focus. I actually noticed some distortion and things that weren't parallel because I took it off a tripod. I use a tripod when I can, and trust me, it's worth it if you're trying to actually do something like collect real evidence and document something that's crazy. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. So don't forget you have other things besides your camera. You got casting, but you got to know how to do that right. It's not just mix and pour. Everyone thinks it's mix and pour. It's not. Don't forget to look at my book, Casting Bigfoot Evidence. Also, three-dimensional scanning. Don't forget your field notes. You should be taking notes about what you're observing and actually writing any limitations you might have had, like why you couldn't take a parallel picture, what issues you were having, sun to your back image, you're casting a shadow across it. You got to do your best. And don't forget what I said earlier, reviewers, examiners, and attorneys, they often recognize that geometric distortion immediately, and it sometimes can affect the entire, how they're going to evaluate that investigation, because they're looking at it as what kind of professional are you? And I know I said that before, but I just felt like I got to bring it up again. It's kind of a big deal. We're going to go out and call ourselves investigators. We're going to go out and call ourselves researchers, and then we're going to put up blurry photographs. I mean, I know Bigfoot's known for being blurry, but their foot impressions aren't. There's no reason why you can't take the time to take proper photographs for a proper analysis and proper investigation before you start casting stuff. All right, so I don't know if you know this, but I've been doing research with bears. I've been studying their paw pads. I've been studying their dermal papillae. All right, so we have what's called dermal ridges or friction ridges. I'm sure everybody knows that. The raised lines on our skin, right? They have little peg-like formations called dermal papillae. And in certain situations, they can actually sometimes mimic uh, what our dermal ridges may look like in certain situations. Anyway, it's a long drawn out project. I'm coming up on like in a year and a half, year and 7 months, somewhere in there on this project. Anyway, writing a cool paper, got lots of photos. So I'm gonna show you one picture and I'm gonna explain what it is that I'm actually doing. And what's pretty cool, and I'm gonna do a little section on this at some point. One of the things that I do that's so time consuming when I'm doing an analysis on Bigfoot casts that have purported dermal ridges is I'm measuring the ridge to ridge distance. And that's the top of one ridge to the top of another ridge. Well, you have to carefully select which ones you're doing. It has to be representative of that particular flow area, flow region, because you could easily skew the results on purpose if you wanted. I could intentionally choose larger ones all the time to make the data come out larger. So you kind of have to be careful and ethical with how you're doing this. Anyway, the whole point is that different sections of our foot, different sections of our fingers, even the just the tip area of our fingers have different areas that have different ridge to ridge distances where they would be known to be wider or smaller. So knowing that information and where these things occur can help me determine if we have the right flow pattern on, say, a foot impression. um, these ridge to ridge distances, are they accurate for the area, right? So I have come across a few casts that have to say that even given the distortion that occurred during the deposition of the foot into the substrate, those particular um, ridge to ridge distances were a little bit larger than they should be for that one area. So it's a one off, right? I can't conclusively say that because that's different, it must be a Bigfoot. All I can say is that one particular data point's different. So what I'm looking for is a pattern, right? So if I can find the pattern that that particular size footprint in that area of the foot has known dermal ridges to have ridge widths of this, then we may be onto something, right? It's a slow, painstaking process, but it is what it is, and that's what I've been doing. So, and just out of curiosity, what I decided to do was to compare The dermal papillae ridge distances, they don't have ridges, but peg to peg, I guess. Uh, anyway, it turns out that theirs are about the same as mine. So, what does that mean? It means that sometimes those pegs, when they're hitting the ground or when they grow up and fold over, I'm going to do a whole episode on the bear stuff anyway. So, we're not going to get too deep into that. But let's just say that there's like three different time periods when a bear paw hits the ground during the year, during its growth cycle, that can actually make the impression look like it has dermal ridges in it and not regular bear things. And I know most of us can tell what a bear impression looks like. It's just pretty neat that uh, they can have some stuff that could mimic dermal ridges as well. So, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm using this software called Image J. It's something that we all use for minute measurements, and this is what it is. Okay, so you remember those two photographs before. You had one that was parallel, one that wasn't. All right, so what we're going to do now that we're in Image J is I'm going to zoom in on the parallel planed picture and I'm going to measure out 5 millimeters. And if you notice, we are down into being able to almost see those pixels. I decided not to go so close. But anyway, we're going to go up. We're going to set the scale for image A to a known 5 millimeters. Okay, now that we've set this scale to a known 5 millimeters, what we're going to do is we're going to zoom back out and we're going to go over to the picture that is not parallel. And we're going to zoom into the left side of that picture and we're going to measure out 5 millimeters on that scale. And we're going to hit the little measure button. And now you can see the comparison between the two. That's a big difference. Measured 5 millimeters on the scale, didn't come out to 5 millimeters, did it? Now, I want you to pay particularly close attention to that bottom scale. Do you see how those lines are actually slanted? They're not straight. That's going to give you an example of it looks like it would be okay, but it's not. It's slanted, right? You know there's some distortion. So we're going to go in and we're going to measure off 5 millimeters there. And we're going to go up and hit measure. Now it's going to be super close, but just for, an example, I wanted to show you that even though it's that close, it's still going to be slightly different. The picture needs to be parallel. And if you can look again, look at the differences between the two. One looks so much more narrow than the other. Those parallel pictures really make a difference. So, guys, that's why it's so important to be taking pictures on a parallel plane and doing it properly with a scale. If we're going to start looking at small things and talking about using science and talking about measuring dermal ridges and talking about looking at sweat pores and things like that, then I need to, and the other professionals need to be able to measure those, especially knowing what areas are normal ridge widths on humans or normal to be wider and what those average numbers are. It doesn't matter. Screw those numbers. What matters is we need to be able to do this. And if we can't do it, then we have a problem. So don't forget, in many cases, photographs are the enduring record. And investigators are going to have to decide if they're going to investigate accurately and put in the time, or they're going to investigate conveniently. Yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest decision, right? Are you a researcher or are you not? Because accuracy requires attention, it requires time, it requires precision, and sometimes it requires a whole day. It requires a lot. So you have to decide, are you going to do the research or are you just going to do it conveniently for your souvenir? Thank you for watching. We're going to talk about some other stuff, and hopefully, my personality was a little bit better and not as boring as before. I tried to show you some stuff this time. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. All right, mugshot. What do you think? Was that any better?